Hi, this is Dan Bloom with CreateDatingTips.com, and today I want to share with you some startling facts about South Korea. So maybe you're into South Korean culture through K-pop, or maybe you're going to teach in South Korea, or maybe you're South Korean and you just found this and want to know what the heck I'm going to talk about, and why should I even talk about it. So before I go into it, I want you to understand that I don't have any grudges towards South Korea or South Korean culture. I love Korea, and I spent 5 years in Korea and I loved it. My issues are with South Korea's unwillingness to accept these, to see these trends that I believe are serious, and instead to blame these trends on foreign influence, when in reality it's their own culture, own society that's hurting South Koreans. Anyway, enough of my personal opinion there. Let's go into some of these facts. So the first fact is that South Korea has one of the highest pornography revenue per capita. This is 2011. According to the book Marriage, A History by Stephanie Cons, she talks about how pornography is a byproduct of Victorian society. In Victorian society, there was sex was seen as something bad, evil, degrading, immoral, and had no place in proper society. And because of that, pornography and prostitution came about. And this is what's happened in South Korea. South Korean culture and society is very much like the Victorian culture of the United States and of England back in the 19th century and early 20th century. So South Korean culture is very much, you have to be pure, you have to be good, and there's no acceptance for anyone who's different or for anyone who feels differently about things. And because of that, Koreans can only let it out through pornography or through prostitution. And you'd think it's just men, but actually there are a lot of women who go to places, host bars, to vent out their sexual frustrations as well. Another startling fact is that South Korea has one of the highest abortion rates in the world. Now this is many reasons. For one, it's, again, for Koreans, marriage and relationships and romance has a very utilitarian role. And what that means is that you marry someone, you have a baby with someone for the greater good or for the family, which, is, if you can tell from my tone of voice, I'm not a big believer in that. Personally, I believe people should be able to choose for themselves, but that's because I'm very Western in my thinking there. So abortion is very high in Korea, and the reasons for that is that families abort their children if the children don't have potential to make the family look good or to help the family because the baby is illegitimate or because it's not a son. So there's a lot of practical reasons that families themselves want the abortion. Another reason is that Koreans don't really have much sexual education, and that's actually the next thing I want to talk about. Is that next fact, Korean schools don't teach sexual education to the extent that in the West, you're taught about STDs, condom use, pregnancy, so on and so forth. And I believe it's because, again, there's no place for sex in South Korean society, to the point where it's hurting South Koreans, in my opinion. I mean, South Koreans, students, all they know is study, study, study. But that's another topic. So going back to what I was saying, the lack of sexual education causes Koreans to not know how to use condoms or to care about condoms. And so they get the woman pregnant, and they view abortion as a form of contraception, or the consequences of keeping the baby are just too horrible. I mean, single moms have the worst, and I'm saying the worst, social position in Korean society, especially if they're teenagers or young. It's a tough life. I mean, it's a tough life for single mothers anywhere. But in Korea, the lack of understanding and the lack of accepting that Korean culture offers or shows makes life even more difficult. And actually, because of South Korean culture and South Korean society's lack of or unwillingness to understand that people are different, South Korea has one of the highest suicide rates in the world. For example, in 2009, roughly 31 out of 100,000 people committed suicide per year, which is big. I mean, when I lived in Korea in 2008, 2009, there were stories of celebrities committing suicide, and one in particular was because she was forced to do things she was an actress, and she was forced to do things that she didn't want to do, but she had no choice because because she was a woman, because of how Korean society works. So I think that's a shame, and Korean students commit suicide. Korea isn't like Japan. I'm not sure if it's true now, but Japan has a reputation and does have a history of accepting suicide as a way to avoid shame or hurting the family name. In Korea, I don't think there is that culture as well, but people commit suicide. So much so that actually in Seoul in 2008, they put barriers on the subways to make sure people would stop killing themselves. I mean, come on. I mean, you start seeing these kind of things, something's wrong. And speaking of wrong in terms of what I perceive to be wrong, only 1 out of 10 marriages in South Korea are interracial. Now, understand this is a big step forward for Korea. I mean, interracial, intercultural marriage was never even discussed until the 1950s, 1960s when American soldiers or UN soldiers were in South Korea. But now, 1 out of 10 marriages in South Korea are interracial. That's big. And the thing about that is that these interracial marriages are having children. So now you're having intercultural Koreans, or Koreans who are not quote-unquote fully Korean. You see, Korea is very interesting because to be Korean, it has to do with your skin color. You're going to be hearing a lot of stories about children who don't look Korean in terms of their race, but who are, by definition, Korean. They have a Korean mother or Korean father. They were born in Korea. They have a Korean passport. So that's a shocking fact about Korea. And that's one that actually Korean society is going to have to adapt to, or I don't know what's going to happen there. So these are some facts about Korea that I find very shocking, to say the least, because when I first came to Korea, in my case, when I first came to Korea, it did look all lovey-dovey, all happy, and it looks so Western. If you go to Korea, if you look at Korea, it looks so Western. The K-pop looks like Western hip-hop, just with a Korean twist to it. And, if you look at Korea, Seoul, and stuff like that, they got everything that's Western. But if you dig deeper, you find out that actually it's not true at all. And this is very different than, say, Japan or China, because in Japan, they accept multiculturalism a lot more. In fact, they encourage it these days because they need more offspring, they need more children. And the demographics aren't looking too good. Whereas in China, there is, in my opinion, again, this is just my opinion, China is much more multiculturally acceptable because it has to be, because it has a lot of cultures within the country. Now, sure, there is a certain place for these other cultures, i.e., like depending on your culture, you have more status or whatnot. But there is an acceptance of subcultures, and there is an acceptance of something different. Whereas in Korea, they don't have that yet because they never really had to deal with it or accept it. They could always just close off their borders and just stop foreigners from coming in, or making it very shameful for people to get involved with foreigners on an intimate level. But those days are gone. And so I'm really curious to see what's going to happen with Korea. Now, why would I talk about this, if I have a Korean dating site? The reason is because I believe that people do come from their history, they come from their culture, they come from the values of their culture, and the Korean person you'll be dating comes from a Korean culture that is changing very rapidly. And the person you're dating now is a byproduct of those changes. So thanks for listening, and I wish you the best with your Korean relationship.